Hi guys, this is just a short video where I'm going to talk about a few tips that have helped me when I'm sketching as a designer. I've been an industrial and product designer for about the past 8 years, and sketching is always a really big part of the process when you're coming up with and developing a new idea. So here's 5 tips that I've learned in that time that have helped me with my design sketching. Tip number 1. So tip number 1 is going to be to warm up. The first line that you put down on the page is very rarely your best. It usually takes a couple of minutes to get your arm and your hand warmed up and to allow yourself to be as coordinated as you can be. Sometimes when you just start drawing, your lines aren't going to be perfect and you might be a little bit shaky. So it's always best to warm up first, loosen up your arm, make sure you're using your arm as a hinge, and your next sketch is probably going to be much better. Tip number 2 is to use a good pen and some decent paper. You can search all over for the perfect pen, but I really don't think you can beat a standard Bic or ballpoint pen. I don't think you need any kind of fine liner or technical pen. I think a ballpoint pen does the job just fine. The paper that you use is important, but again, as long as it's smooth and it doesn't cause too much friction, it's going to be absolutely fine. For most of my drawings, I use standard A4 printer paper, if I'm not using an iPad. Anything other than a rough artist pad is going to do the job, and you really don't need anything fancy. Tip number 3 is to control line weight. When you design sketching, get used to drawing lines with a varying weight. Usually this means starting off with a lighter line weight until you know exactly where you want to put a proper line. A lot of sketching is drawing construction lines with a lighter line weight so that you can essentially decide where you want to put a stronger line to define your object. You can practice line weights pretty easily by just drawing straight lines. It's more important to think about each line, where you're going to put it, and try and reduce the amount of mistakes that you make, and try not to put bold lines where you don't want them. Tip number 4 is to define your purpose. Design sketching seems to cover a broad range of approaches, and I think it's important to determine what the purpose of the sketch is before you put pen to paper. You need to decide whether you're trying to generate ideas quickly, develop an idea and its details, or whether you're trying to do a presentation sketch so that you can show an idea to someone else. If you're just trying to generate ideas quickly, then your sketches are going to be quick and loose and unrefined. If you're trying to develop an idea and its details, you might want to focus on a smaller area of an object, and you're not necessarily going to complete the whole thing. If you're working on a presentation sketch, that means you want to show an idea to someone else. So you already have your design and your idea developed. You just want to show it off. So here you're going to spend more time and you're going to have a much more polished result. Tip number 5 is to add simple details to improve your sketch. Most design sketches are done quite quickly, but there are some easy ways to add details that really help to bring the sketch to life. One of those ways is to add simple shading. You don't have to add anything crazy. Even outlining a shadow or adding a small amount of hatching can illustrate where a light source is positioned, and it can add a lot of depth to the sketch. Another way to add depth is by using contour lines. Imagine if you were to split your object with a 2D plane and draw a line where they intersect. This line would show up any curvature or surface depth without even adding any shading. This is a really simple way to create the illusion of depth in a few seconds. 2.5D. If you're drawing something in 2D or orthographic, you can add what are called 2.5D details, which is kind of like adding 3D details to a 2D sketch. Things like adding a shadow, outlining the backside of a shape, or adding a contour line can can really add a lot of depth to a 2D drawing and kind of make it look like something in between 2D and 3D. A lot of drawing that I do is actually in 2D, and not everything needs to be a perspective drawing, so being able to add some depth to these drawings quickly is really beneficial. So these are some tips that have helped me while I'm designing. Hopefully they can help someone else as well. Subscribe to the channel for more 2D and 3D content, and feel free to watch some of my other videos if you're into that. But that's it for this video, so I'll see you in the next one.